Fired AG leading Epstein inquiry reveals Virgin Island governor pressured her on pedophile's behalf. Uh, it's, it's coming more. It should be coming more and more clear, I should say, to the world that our country is being run by a bunch of pedos. Our world is being run by a bunch of pedos. I mean, look. That's why they're pushing this transgender movement on our children and all this other stuff that's going on. They're attacking our children because they are some evil pedos that is running this world in our country. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. Has a link to my Patreon where I talk about things I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my merch store. Also, check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for news as well. All right, let's talk about this news. Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George was actively involved in prosecuting cases related to Jeffrey Epstein until she was unexpectedly terminated by Virgin Island Governor Albert Bryan Jr. in December of the previous year. And you know I covered that. The abrupt firing caused significant shockwaves in the region and garnered international attention. Many speculated that Bryan's decision was influenced by George's legal actions against Epstein's associates. Just before her surprising removal, George had secured a $105 million settlement from Epstein's estate and had filed another lawsuit against individuals on Wall Street believed to be connected to Epstein. See, once she started going after Wall Street, that's when the wall started closing in on her. That's when they was like, yeah, we got to get rid of this chick. But this wasn't the first instance where Bryan might have leaned on George with regards to Epstein. Now, in July, George testified under oath that in 2019, Bryan had personally urged her to issue a special waiver to the territory's sex offender law, allowing Epstein to travel without specific notifications or restrictions. This request surprised George, as Epstein was a well-known convicted sex offender linked to numerous cases of abuse in the Virgin Islands. George found it unusual that a sex offender like Epstein was able to make such a request to the governor. She perceived it as Epstein using his political influence over the governor for a matter that was related to law enforcement. Bryan repeatedly pressured George to grant the travel waiver, a move she considered improper. And of course it was improper. Now, I think maybe Epstein probably has some dirt on Bryan, just like he had a bunch of dirt on a lot of our politicians that are disgusting individuals that more than likely had sex with a lot of these young girls that he had on his island. I mean, just disgusting stuff. So that's why Bryan was pressuring George. But Epstein's attorney and tax specialist, Erica Kellerhalls, also lobbied for the waiver. Despite this pressure, George refused to grant the waiver, which was in contrast to her predecessors. Her predecessors granted them this. But the details mentioned came to light during depositions conducted in July as part of a civil case initiated by George against J.P. Morgan Chase, alleging the bank's involvement in facilitating Epstein criminal activities. And I just did another video today on that. The bank countered these claims by asserting that the Virgin Islands government was complicit in Epstein's criminal history. So they're pointing fingers at each other. Well, both of them is complicit, is what I believe. But these disclosures were presented in federal court, where both parties were continuing to advance their respective cases. In another deposition from July, George expressed that when she assumed office, she had learned about Epstein's private island being referred to as Pedophile Island, where disturbing activities such as sex trafficking were reportedly occurring. She found it astonishing that local authorities seemed to be neglecting the issues. They knew about it. Everyone knew what was going on the island. Even remember McCain, even John McCain's wife alluded to them knowing about it. So even even the one, he's deceased, so I'm gonna try to not to be too negative on John McCain. I'm sure he's answering for what he's done, but so I'm not going to be too negative on him. But Congress and them knew what was going, so showing that people in Congress knew what was going on. The new filings shed light on Epstein's use of his political influence in the Virgin Islands to manipulate the territory's sex offender law. The Virgin Islands had aimed to update its sex offender registry law in compliance with federal standards. Epstein, a registered sex offender due to his 2008 conviction, was concerned about the proposed changes that would affect him. He and his associates closely monitored the legislation and took actions to weaken it. Epstein was directly involved in negotiations regarding the legislation, even drafting amendments and coordinating meetings to influence its outcome. Some of the suggested amendments were adapted verbatim into the final law. These changes granted the Virgin Islands Attorney General the authority to grant waivers to Tier 1 sex offenders like Epstein, allowing them to bypass travel notifications and disclose information about their companions for up to 21 days. I mean, despicable, sick stuff. But let me know what you think about this. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.